FDA says it's embracing generative AI to streamline scientific reviews, cutting days of work down to minutes. So when an agency that's known for its deliberate pace and thorough evaluation adopts a powerful new technology in weeks, should we be pleased or alarmed? Welcome to CareTalk, America's home for incisive debate about healthcare, business, and policy. I'm David Williams, president of Health Business Group.
And I'm John Driscoll, the chairman of Yukon Health. So, David, what's all this to worry about? Technology is our friend.
Yeah, it is our friend, John. It's our buddy. But, you know, this came up last week at FDA, and they issued a press release.
Oh, Dave. I mean, what does the FDA actually do anyways? What are they responsible for? Food, safety, drugs, how kind of risky healthcare is and medical devices. I mean, why shouldn't we what could go wrong?
Well, it makes a lot of sense that the FDA is evaluating the use of AI, but what's actually happened is they suddenly issued a press release that they're going to scale the use of AI internally across all FDA centers by June 30th of this year. That's a quote. And they also claim they're going to be operating on a common, secure AI system that's integrated with the FDA's internal data platforms by that time.
Beautiful AI system. So let's just unpack this a little bit. Artificial intelligence, as currently referred to, is really our large software models that can be run either autonomously, where people are actually not involved and the code is running on itself based on a lot of data to develop insights, or it can have sort of a human in the loop, sort of supervised learning. In each case, we're talking about large computer models, trillions of bits of data, and either humans supervising the models or non-supervising the models. The models are the engines that create the intelligence, allegedly. And what's artificial is it's created by the models. The models are currently based on what are called large language models, which scour the internet and any other data they can find, filter it through human interpretation, and then feed it into models that are aimed at, over time, automating tasks, creating insights, and potentially creating new insights and have shown that they have created new insights that we otherwise couldn't have figured out. I know one researcher who's got a very toxic form of cancer, who's an MD, PhD in comp sci, who's got a rare form of cancer, who's using AI to try to identify new modes of treatment. I mean, David, these are big, powerful models. We like computers. We're using a computer. Tell me what could go wrong with this AI, this leveraging of the technical talent of the United States to do a better job at government, at the Food Drug Administration.
So, John, the FDA commissioners, Dr. Marty Makary,
Love Marty Makary.
Right. So he was a guest here. And if you want to listen to that episode, which is arguably more sane, we were talking about medical blind spots, you can look in the show notes and you'll see the link there. So I commend that to you. I actually want to read verbatim a quote from him in the press release. And then let's talk about what they're planning to say and what could go wrong. I actually think it's self-evident almost when you hear what he said. So this is a quote.
Self-evident.
Quote, "I was blown away by the success of our first AI-assisted scientific review pilot." So our first pilot. "We need to value our scientists' time and reduce the amount of non-productive busy work that has historically consumed much of the review process. The agency-wide deployment of these capabilities holds tremendous promise in accelerating the review time for new therapies," said Dr. Makary. So, you know, and then the next quote is from the person that's in charge of AI there, Jin Liu, and he says, "This is a game-changer technology that has enabled me to perform scientific review tasks in minutes that used to take 3 days." So the risk, John, is that we're taking something, when you say he's blown away by the success of the first pilot, and therefore you go from the first pilot to agency-wide implementation right away. Well, where is this pilot? They didn't even release any information about it, and who cares if this one guy was impressed by it. It's ridiculous. It's the opposite of taking the real scientific evidence. John, if I came to you with it, how many drugs do people find in the lab that says, oh, this thing looks great. It has promise to cure cancer, ulcerative colitis, diabetes. And if you just said, we got to put this on the market by the end of next month, it's absolutely insane and the opposite of what FDA does.
So let's think about this contextually. That's a great example. We've been thinking since the cancer, the commitment to end cancer as we know it under President Nixon, the cancer moonshot under Biden, and all the cancer attempts in the middle, including the notion that we would be able to take genomics and cure cancer. We've consistently been able to look at what cures cancer in the lab with regard to mice, and it's failed in humans. There's a complex biology. And then, of course, there's the medical device area. And then there's the food safety area. You're raising a really important point. One of the reasons why we rely on the FDA is to slow down the deployment of novel technologies and approaches to make sure that they're safe. The ultimate baseline aim of the Food and Drug Act, which I think was part of the progressive movement in 1911, was to start to develop the leading safety regime in the world around deploying medical devices, drugs, and also to make sure that our food was safe. The notion that we would kind of delegate that. The other thing is it's coming at a really weird time. I mean, we've just gone through the forced retirement or firing of thousands of probationary employees. Those employees are often and almost exclusively, but not all, are the youngest employees in the agency. Those employees are digital natives. I had an interesting conversation with the head of the Counterterrorism Center under Bush and Obama. And I said, what's the biggest thing you worry about? He said, well, under the last Trump administration, 70% of all the employees under the age of 40 had left the federal service. And those are our digital natives. We're going to rely on them to govern, innovate, and invest in and deploy new technologies. If we lose the smartest young talent, we will not be able to retain our technical edge. So we've just fired a bunch of people who have that, while potentially deploying, to your point, technology that we don't really know whether it works. I mean, John, these large language, go.
So, John, what we're left with here is, so you've got the people that really know how to use new technologies. So they're gone because they're probationary. And then you also have the people that were most experienced who know, hey, a bright new thing comes along. How do you evaluate? How do you use it? So now you have left a small, stressed set of employees who are neither the voice of the most experienced or the ones the most technical savvy. And they said, hey, let this thing loose. And boom. So you're going to have something you're within. This would be bad to deploy in an agency that was stable, but it's terrible to deploy right now, given that the most senior people and the most technologically savvy people are out and others are in a bad spot.
And I think there's a really important point about what intelligence is. I mean, novelty and insight and identifying something doesn't necessarily, from the data, doesn't necessarily translate into reasoning, discernment, or judgment. One of the things that Professor Ziad Obermeyer used to be at Harvard, now he's at Berkeley, and he talks about this in some of his speeches. He's a professor on AI. I was going to say he's an AI professor, but that would suggest that he is provided by technology. And Dr. Obermeyer said, look, there are forms of intelligence that aren't human reasoning. I mean, a squirrel will hide nuts in the fall, and after the winter, basically be able to find 70% of the nuts it puts out. A human couldn't do that, but the human can determine whether someone is suffering from social determinants of health, and maybe that's feeding into their unstable diabetes or cancer. They can make a judgment call on whether the different populations respond to drugs differently. His point is, don't confuse a brain, an analysis that could be done by a squirrel and translate that into something that could be used by a human. I mean, then you've got this whole issue of AI hallucinations. Do you want to just describe what those are, David?
John, I would say I will do that. And I would say that since the FDA hasn't been systematic in their assessment of this issue, let's do it. So the first one, hallucinations, falls under accuracy. I'll come back to that in a second. There's also issues of data privacy, transparency, over reliance on the technology, and speed over safety. So specifically with hallucinations, you could say, wow, this thing can summarize this huge document, could read thousands of pages in seconds, and it can give me the summary. So the thing is, the summary may be flawed. It may have something that's got nothing to do with actually what's in the paper for whatever reason that's not actually even understood by the people that created the model, never mind those that are using it. So you're going to see a hallucination that's just kind of made up from something that's not there. And then also these drugs that are being submitted for approval, they're novel. So they're also talking about things that have never been talked about before. So the hallucinations come about.
Let's unpack that. So what a hallucination is when you ask a model a very specific question, like give me an example of a marathon on the West Coast of the United States. And it gives you the example of a marathon in Philadelphia, which that was really one of the large language models created that answer. A hallucination is something that we know to be wrong based on the facts. But if you didn't know the US, if you were running that search from Lagos, Nigeria, or Mumbai in India, you might not realize that it is factually inaccurate. And then to your point, what the FDA is dealing with is true novelty. And just to be clear, the hallucinations failure to actually be consistent with the facts as we know it can range between 5 to 25%, depending on how hard the model is working on what kinds of issues. And just to be clear, unlike other forms of technology, when we talk about a model, the way that AI models work is they're constantly running different versions of logic. Which we really can't backtrack or back propagate to actually determine, to your point, how it got to the wrong answer, which in AI is called a hallucination. I think that's to your point. Let's break this into pieces. And then you've got, well, the FDA is primarily dealing with new stuff where we don't necessarily know the answer and judgments required. How could that possibly go wrong, David?
I don't know. So, John, I would put this piece of I would mention you're bringing up a point about transparency. I would say so. Normally, you put the submission, and it's thousands of pages, not because it's fun, but because it's required, and there's a lot of detail that's needed before you're going to give a drug to somebody that could potentially cure them and potentially kill them. And the FDA needs to look at that. So, if we have an approval, how do we know what they based it on? It was a summary here. You have the same model, summarize it again. It may be actually different. What do we do when we go to court and someone has a lawsuit about this? It doesn't make any sense. And let's talk about data privacy. John, we're careful when you're using ChatGPT or something like that, not to put in your personal information. We know that, Elon Musk with his Doge cruise, when he came in, take all his government data and put it somewhere that AI is going to analyze. So now all this submission that you spend hundreds of millions of dollars typically to create as a pharma company is now going to go into some sort of model. How do we know that the competitors won't see that or it won't be incorporated, into the training model?
But before we get there, I think we want to put in kind of one cheer for AI and technology. There's a little good news here. First of all, and I think we should probably dig into AI in a more meaningful way because it's going to be relevant for healthcare. And maybe we do some sections on that and talk about what works, what's possible, and what's applied. Because we are going to be 1 million clinicians short, roughly, over the next 5 years in healthcare. And we absolutely need to leverage technology in novel ways. And we're going to have to use novel technologies in novel ways. And how these models are really fast at answering a lot of questions quickly. But to your point, the power of that models and its persuasiveness can sometimes mask inaccuracy. Early last year, there was a lawyer who was using it to file legal briefs. And the model is designed to generate an answer, even if the answer sometimes isn't there. And so what he found is it was citing all kinds of legal cases, to your point about being in the law, that never existed in very persuasive, detailed ways. And so I think that you can acknowledge the power and the promise of these models while also being a little bit skeptical about our ability today to deploy the models around areas where true life and death is at risk.
So, John, so we see this press release, which I will just go out and say, if I didn't say it before, it's ridiculous what they're planning to do. And I say it's not going to happen.
That isn't just what you said in the prep session, but I'm glad you've cleaned up your conversation.
Exactly. So, but what's actually going to happen? Let's take a look at, compare what's happened.
We're in Trump world. The world. What's interesting is how we know that the White House is a reality TV show. And increasingly the Pentagon is a daytime telenovela. What we do not need is that the Food and Drug Administration, and we both have a high regard for Marty as a surgeon, as a researcher, as a voice of healthcare reform, but historically he's been a skeptic of a lot of trends. And this is just a sort of almost like a reaction to the thin power of the deep model. I don't know how we deal with this, David.
It's just what's one of the ridiculous things about it is that if we remember the show where he was here and you're talking about these blind spots, and it's like, people thought peanut allergy was a big thing and that opioids were good. And, these are people that actually looked at some evidence. They didn't say, hey, the first pilot of this peanut allergy thing told me this, and therefore I'm going to go and do this everywhere. It's nuts.
Actually, we'll deal with the fact that you're now speaking ironically, but it actually was one study. And it was provocative because people use peanut butter and peanuts, and it did become this sort of single point failure, and then sort of hysteria around peanuts. And Marty, what's interesting is Marty, of all people, his book, remember, is called, just remind our dutiful listeners, is called Blind Spots, which is where medicine gets it wrong. And I think what you're saying is, hey, Marty, you might have either, if it's not a blind spot, you might want to take off the dark glasses around AI.
Yeah. All right. So maybe when his boss, Bobby Kennedy, isn't swimming in sewage, she'll set him straight and put him on a more rational path. John, I'm going to go talk about what's going to happen, but what do you think about that one first?
We've got reports and pictures of RFK Jr. swimming in the Rock Creek Park, which the National Park Service has warned is has a high collection of bacteria and is a depositing ground for raw sewage that's overflow from the DC metro area. So let's as a public service message, kids, pets, parents, do not swim where Bobby swims. But getting back to it, I think the balancing act here, David, is we should be leaning in and have to find ways to lean into technology, but they should meet the same standards, the very high standards that the FDA has established, since it was established over 100 years ago, and that's really the standard. And we know enough that these models almost have an urge to complete answers where the data isn't there, or to create some answers where it isn't. But that doesn't mean that we can't use them wisely, but not just deploy them randomly. I mean, that's really what's scary about the press release, and honestly jarring given the source of it.
So, John, I don't know, it was Yogi Berra that said, predictions are dangerous, especially when you're talking about the future. But here I'm going to go and say that, what they announced in the press release last week is not going to happen. So they say that it's going to be rolled out everywhere by June 30th, and it's going to be integrated with their systems. And the reason I say this is that, first of all, it takes longer to integrate it with their systems than next month, even if they had everybody working at full speed. And if we look at what's happened in other places in healthcare where it's tried to deploy generative AI, I'm talking about health systems, for example, it takes a lot longer. And the type of people that work at FDA, even those that are remaining, are more cautious than that. And there's no way that they're just going to go and deploy this everywhere next month. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I worry about that. Because I do think that there's a lot of fear in the federal bureaucracy. There's a lot of fear in DC Metro. People don't want to lose their jobs. And there's an enormous desire to please, particularly in this administration, the boss. And so I think I just hope we get the best of Marty's data and scientific informed skepticism, the best of Jay Batterjee's scientific pedigree, and somehow apply. I hope that the press release does not actually reflect actual policy, because it shouldn't. In my view, based on my knowledge of the models. But David, I'm not sure we got more on this topic. We may want to wrap on this note that hopefully what they're saying they're doing, they aren't doing.
All right, John. Well, we'll say that's it for another episode of CareTalk. We've been talking about artificial intelligence and artificial reasoning as it relates to FDA.
False reasoning. I'm
David Williams, president of Health Business Group.
And I'm John Driscoll, the chair of the UConn Health System. If you liked what you heard and you didn't, we'd love you to subscribe on your favorite service.